Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us tonight Mr. Harry Gross, a young man of great intellectual promise, dare I say promise, but he's really a good observer in the world. And there are a lot of things to discuss. We have a pretty eclectic list of things we mention. But tonight, maybe it would be good to talk about the decline of the U.S. dollar, which is an issue of really pretty extraordinary import. So, and a reciprocal of that is the price of gold. If anyone is watching that story, for a long time, everything was backed by gold in the world, and the gold coins of different Western countries were pretty much the same. They had the same amount of gold in them. And they were pretty easily traded back and forth. And this went on for a long time. And the whole story of the evolution of currency is complicated, and probably we should be cautious about entertaining such a discussion. But after the World War I, there was stress on the dollar-denominated currencies, and then particularly when the Great Depression occurred and the view about that gold might be causing economic issues. And so the idea was to make the U.S. dollar no longer directly convertible into gold, which is what happened. And actually, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, maybe 1933, you better send all your gold coins in, and we'll give you some U.S. dollars back. But if you possess gold coins or have gold in your teeth, I don't know, maybe it's okay there. But the government did not want private citizens to really have access to gold. They thought it would stabilize the situation. Well, in any event, things rolled along like that. The U.S. collected a huge amount of gold. After World War II, everyone sent their gold here. The dollar became triumphant, and the situation rolled along until Richard Nixon. Basically, there was the U.S. Treasury would pay $35 for an ounce of gold. So that was the standard, and that rigorous number caused issues. Well, in the many decades since that time, the price of gold, of an ounce of gold, has rocketed up enormously. It's day by day, it's done that. There was maybe around 1980, there was a spike in the price of gold, but nevertheless, the gold and U.S. dollars became basically the currency for the world. And the fact that the U.S. dollar was a reserve currency was tremendously important for the welfare of the country. And for recent events have taken place, the price of gold has just extraordinarily gone up. And it's now over, I think $5,600 an ounce. And contrast that to up until Richard Nixon did something, the price of gold was $35 an ounce. So it's up a multitude of times, and since it's the reciprocal of the dollar has become progressively less valuable, tremendously so, on world markets. And one of the reasons the U.S., I'm going through a little epistle here, and I'll throw the football to you in a second, Harry.
Take your
the
time.
reason that the U.S. standard of living has been so good, and the U.S. government could run such debts, is the idea was the U.S. was a very stable player, and that dollars would be an appropriate currency to possess. Other countries were running such huge deficits and were so unstable and so unreliable that they depended on U.S. dollars as actually the currency of choice in the country. Indeed, a number of countries just gave up on their own currency and used dollars as their bill of trade. Well, This is quite an alarming turn of events that have taken place acutely, very alarming. One could basically say that the dollarization of the world and the fact that the U.S. was the prevailing power, there were a few other contenders, but nevertheless, the U.S. was prevailing power after World War II, and the world order depended on U.S. stability and, one could say, righteousness, and the confidence that the country was going to be run appropriately. And basically, they would balance their budget, innovation would take place, all of those positive things would happen. And thus, the world would somewhat march after the U.S.'s example. And we'd have a lot of moral authority in the world. We'd be the go-to institution, nation, to rectify wrong. And many people would claim we blundered. Nevertheless, that was I think the hegemony of the country was quite established. Now, the situation has reversed acutely, and I guess there are two questions I'll throw out to Harry Gross. I know he's waiting to respond to this. Point number one is what has caused this? That's point number one. Point number two, is it good? And people would say it is good. And indeed, the president thinks that the decline in the value of the dollar is good, and it certainly has some positive reasons for it. And number three, actually I have three questions. Number three, is it bad? So, all right, Harry, would you like to opine on this?
All right. Okay, to your first question, what's caused it? A number of things have caused it, but the most acute cause has been twofold. First, tariffs. By driving up the price of goods, particularly imported goods, it has made it more expensive for other countries to buy goods from the United States, to export to the United States, and to generally do trade. And that has spooked investors to some degree, particularly those who buy treasury bonds, which are usually pretty stable across the board. But it has generally made the dollar weaker vis-a-vis other currencies because it's more expensive to import with dollars. Why would you not import with another currency across the board? Its second cause is economic instability in the United States and general instability. When you have chaos and a feeling that contracts will not be honored, that the rule of law might be slipping, people tend to sell off whatever reserve currencies they have in the dollar in that sense. And so treasury yields are spiking. People are dumping the dollar.
I mean, not so much.
Well, in the sense that people are selling off a lot.
Right,
and
that's
so
true.
that is also weakening the dollar because there is no longer a willingness to engage in good faith with the U.S. dollar with many countries, particularly Denmark recently, given the recent unpleasantness, has effectively sold off all of its sovereign holdings.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? To speak to that, is that people, the tariffs, just to discuss that some more, the counterpunch, which everyone was expected, was, well, you're going to raise your tariffs on our goods, we'll raise tariffs on your goods. But I'm not sure that's happened so much, but what has happened is people have been quite resentful. I mean, I think we have to say that. If you're going to injure a country, presumably for your own benefit. So, you've got, pick any country you want, Guatemala, I don't know, whatever. So in Guatemala, it's a very poor country, and the U.S. has done some nice things for the country, particularly in regards to immigration, whatever. But so if, on the other hand, if they stop, I don't know, they can't sell coffee there anymore. So the banana plantations have closed down or whatever, even though the U.S. doesn't produce much of the way bananas. All these things are happening, and so and also the country has been insulted a fair amount. If you hear the conversation, well, these are there's a coarse word applied to these countries where humans live. It's terrible. The people that live there are terrible. Well, psychologically, that plays a role in this, and maybe more so with Canada or whatever other country you want to pick. And so people just say, "Well, I'm going out of dollars as revenge for the way the U.S. is treating my country. I might not necessarily raise taxes, but that's what's happening." I think that's a point that needs to be made in general about the U.S.'s role vis-a-vis other countries. Mm-hmm. So I think the idea is purported in some circles, we can just kick these other countries around, and when we kick them, it should make us feel good. We're going to, USA, go USA. We're going to insult them, do whatever. We call Canada the 51st state, or whatever animus that appears directed against other countries. And we've been, in many ways, a role model. I mean, we're sort of the great good guys with white hats, the people that put the desperados to flight. And so I think that's having an impact. And that's something that the country's leaders should understand, is that there's a reason to be nice to other countries. There's a reason. There's no reason to go out of your way to give them a nip. And you might do it. You might need to. But you should be cautious about that, particularly rhetorical insults. Do not insult anyone if it can be avoided. I think that's a good rule for a gentleman. I'll say no more on that point.
I would agree with that. Yes, I would concur.
Well, so those are some of the factors. I mean, we could keep going.
There's a number of causes. Those are, I think, the two most acute causes right now. Now, your second question was, what is good about this? And there are some reasons for a weak dollar, economically speaking. The first is that it makes it more profitable to export out. And so the thought is that it would boost domestic production of key goods, increase manufacturing capacity, that kind of stuff, and increase exports.
Right.
And if you have imports decreasing because of high tariffs and exports increasing, that's beneficial for economic growth. It's good for the Treasury, all that kind of stuff. That leads into the why it's bad, though.
Okay.
Because one of the things
there must be something else good or anything else.
Well, that's the primary economic argument.
I'm trying to think of some things that might be good. Well, maybe it would keep American tourists at home. Maybe that would be one of the. I mean, in other words, if you have of course, it'll discourage foreign tourists from coming in. Mm-hmm. But if you run a motel and we never have everybody is going to the Caribbean or wherever, whatever. It's going to keep things home. So there are different parts of the economy and actually, will get some kind of benefit.
To be fair, you're right. It actually would increase foreign tourism, ideally, because now their currency is a more favorable exchange rate. They can spend more money. It's cheaper for them to come in.
Yes, and contrary, we'll start off with I'm sure we can pursue some things that are good.
Yeah.
And one thing to say about this is that there are people that want a debased currency. Mm-hmm. They want that. I mean, it's going down that road's a spooky road, in my opinion. But they want a debased currency, and there can be some economic advantages that occur when this happens.
Yeah.
And some people benefit from it, and indeed the president wishes that to occur. And in a way, if I could say this, it looks like his constituency in many ways are. I don't know how well he states this, but the Rust Belt industries that have closed down. So you had people that were manufacturing cars or whatever they were up to, shotguns that were making it, and those plants have closed down. Particularly so, which I don't think this is mentioned enough, is in the South, the cotton mills have really been pretty much put out of business because of cheaper labor elsewhere. And that's in Macon, you can see that. This had a really devastating impact over the past 100 years of industrial cities in the South. Pick Birmingham, pick out whatever you want. They've really been, all the jobs have left. And we can also go back to the Ross Perot thing. You can hear the sucking sounds of jobs going to Mexico or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it was, so in any event, there are some things that can be positive about this. But okay, now the negative things.
Well, the negative thing is in some ways it's kind of, some of the positive effects actually can't happen because of a weaker dollar. For example, yes, ideally, theoretically, it should boost manufacturing capacity. The problem is because of the nature of the globalized economy, we often have to import a lot of things as part of that manufacturing process. And because of high tariffs and a weaker dollar, it's now more expensive to import those things.
Yes.
And so the gains of a weaker dollar are often offset by the costs of a weaker dollar in the manufacturing process.
Yes.
We've actually lost more manufacturing jobs in the past year since the tariffs have come in than we had in the past 4 years.
By the way, the tariffs have not really bit yet, I think. I mean,
we've now had a year of them,
and the bite is starting more than
it was. I mean, so I'm saying is this is the initial hit.
Right. No. I mean, there should be just the impact of this is going to be more. And I think what's happened is that people have, firstly, they stocked goods up, and a lot of the pain has not come to American consumers exactly yet. So whatever the companies, let's not raise prices too much, and we'll make a box of cereal smaller. I don't know if people have noticed that. We'll try and do whatever we can do. Shrinkflation. Right. Well, whatever we can do to not injure the consumers, but the time is approaching where it's particularly going to be a problem, which is the complexities of the economic system are not totally appreciated, I don't think. But because one maneuver has 50 different events that go through, and you can't. So your maneuver, the original maneuver, might be, well, we're going to get some more money into the Treasury, and we're going to then give some of that money to the voters. The more money will come in. We're giving everybody $1,000, whatever they're doing. I mean, and this money will be directly come from our tariffs on it. Well, so these things like that can happen, and indeed do happen. But all the other secondary impact is not appreciated, which maybe we can speak about.
Yeah. Well, one of those things is that also weaker dollar reduces the purchasing power of American consumers. So you can give them $1,000 back. That $1,000 is no longer worth what that $1,000 would have been worth 2 years ago because of this weaker dollar. And a decline in purchasing power is bad across the board.
That would imply, which I think is a reasonable thing, we sort of segue into inflation. So the story with inflation, whatever is going on with that, and then the other thing about that is it's complicated, but the way that inflation would be controlled would be to maintain interest rates. So it's pretty complicated. So the people that manage economic policy in the country it's really a vexing thing to do. It's not simple. So we can do this, we can do something with the money supply, whatever. We can't control all the multitude of things happening. So a simple thing to do is often counterintuitive a little bit about how that's going to impact things. So we're going to raise tariffs, and then at the same time we want to cut interest rates. Well, if we do that, it's just going to debase the dollar more. So we're really going to have a tremendously debased currency, and that's going to cause all sorts of difficulties. The money the U.S. spends to buy things, we can't buy things. We don't have the money to buy things, and on and on. And you could get into what happened in the Great Depression. So exactly. This is the sort of thing that caused an enormous economic depression. And we'd have to think about what does this do for job creation with massive inflation and also the rigidity of the labor market. So we have, and then we have minimum wages, and not so much the feds, but many states have minimum wages. So we're going to get into all kinds of unknowable issues will occur. Well, keep bouncing the basketball, if you would, Harry.
Another major problem of this, aside from the economics, is a decline in soft power for the United States. That if the dollar becomes sufficiently weak and loses its reserve currency status,
which it's in the process of doing,
then
it's certainly, and that's very, very scary.
Very scary because, one, it will have some really catastrophic knock-on effects in the global economy across the board. But from a purely kind of power politics that posits that America is number one and should stay there, position, this is really bad because it risks further isolating the United States away from the global economy. It challenges our position as a global hegemon. And it feels like a self-inflicted wound in that sense, that there are some things that you just can't help in the world, right? That there are some things you can't avoid. Sometimes bad things just happen. You get a run of bad luck. But intentionally weakening the dollar is going to be one of those things that could dramatically harm American position in the world. Just one of a number of things that could intentionally harm America's position in the world. And a willing abdication of our position just seems not only counterproductive, but bad for the entire world. I mean, you know that I am always quick to criticize our country to some degree, but we have always is the wrong word. We have consistently throughout our history tried to do better than we have not. And to willingly abdicate that role is a net negative for the world and for the United States in particular.
Well, that you could say on that subject, why should the U.S. be numero uno? Why should they do that? They may have some moral imperative, some moral responsibility, particularly because of the ethos of the country. So many different nations here. How do you bind them together? You could have sort of the national church, if you want to think of it that way. American citizens, people, they become traditionally at a ceremony that produced citizenship. People there, they'd weep. People they'd just be euphoric. I can't believe I'm an American now. That's great. And I have to act in a moral way. And this is I come from whatever country I come from. And I've observed human behavior at its worst. And now I'm in a place where things are great. Maybe I mentioned this story back just after the Berlin Wall fell. The U.S. triumphed over communism. I was traveling around in different places, and it was like being a Roman citizen in the age of St. Paul, we could say, who was a Roman citizen, and that was a big deal about his travels in the Middle East, whatever. He going around, I'm a Roman citizen, whatever. Well, it felt that way. I mean, I've never met an American. This is so great for me to meet an American. Well, it's just great. What a wonderful country. And I can remember, I'm sort of segueing off a little bit. I was in Lithuania, who had a terrible experience with Russians, I would say. That's an understatement. Maybe I'll tell the story. I was there as a medical professor, you could say, going around meeting with the professors in the medical school. And it was very, very cold. And the reason is the Russians had turned off all the energy supplies. Mm-hmm. So it was really, really cold. And I would go in the professor's room to be introduced, and he would pick out a bottle of vodka and pour me a little bit to warm me up. Very hospitable. And then he said, here's my suitcase, because if the Russians come again, I'm imagining the KGB is going to arrest me and take me away. I've already prepared a suitcase. Here it is. So when they come for me. But okay, that sort of story. And on that note, with all these terrible things happening, I was staying in this sort of a rickety hotel with paper-thin walls, and very cold. And I was flipping the television, whatever, and they had some Russian shows on, showing tractor factories. There'd be, I'm working particularly hard. I've made this tractor or whatever. That was sort of as best I could determine it. And then they had the American show Santa Barbara, it showed this lush California lifestyle with Americans, and that was the ideal. If I can just be like an American, I'll be prosperous, I'll be safe, I can do good. And on and on. And now, if the country is shown up to be no different than any other group of people, which reversion to the mean would be kind of normal, but that's a big deal. And that's some of the things that we've lost. And the question would be, who's going to pick up the marbles? And it may well be China, which is probably worth an exploration what China's system is and how they're doing so well. And I'll just throw this one other comment out. That's off the subject slightly, but the Chinese, if you want to go to, traditionally, if you wanted to go to college or whatever university or get a job with the government, that's going back to the old imperial days, they have tests as to how well they knew the Confucius ancient literature. It have to be how well you memorized it. You have to just memorize stuff, and then the emperor would put you in the deal. Well, in China now, the people are just when you're 10 years old, you're just going crazy about passing this one great test, which it marks you for the rest of your life. So if you score, a 99, shall we say, the rest of your life, every door will open, everything will happen, every possibility would happen, and the motivation to succeed in this is absolutely extraordinary. And then if you really don't do well, your life is whatever it is. But the impact of the government putting this test out there, I mean, is one of the sociological events that go on that are doing something for China. And so if you look at a 10th grader in China or a 10th grader here, people are, what do 10th graders do these days here? They're rocking and rolling, they're listening to the Beach Boys, maybe,
yeah,
I don't know,
for sure.
twist and shout, or whatever they're up to, whatever they do.
Absolutely.
But in China, I mean, they're just buried in the library, the books. It's an 80-hour-a-week story about just studying for this examination day in, day out. And that process, I think, causes extraordinary diligence and an enormous amount of human power that is in the cards. And so if we're going head on head with China, with everything else happening, we have to, I think, respect the Chinese educational system. I mean, it's complicated, but at least getting that exam and the intensity of people, and it's right, I've just touched the surface on this, but some of the things are out there, and the question is going to be, who is going to take the marbles? Yeah. Certainly the U.S. is creating a lot of enemies, and deliberately almost, you could say. And I don't know if the American citizens really feel the same way the government is acting. Yeah. I think I've never met anyone that lusted for Greenland. I never have. I mean, it's rather, I have to say this, I've talked about it before in our little show here. It's absolutely astounding how that has come to pass. It is absolutely astounding. And for all the good that has come of that effort, you could toss in a trash can, in my opinion, and that's a bad policy. Yeah. And well, it goes along with the dollar situation, and also the ability of American tourists to go wherever. So many people are happy to have American tourists. We like Americans because they come to our whatever. They see the castles. They bring in a lot of money. They bring a lot of money and whatever.
They buy really stupid, cheap little things
whatever they do. Whatever they
make
do.
my living.
There's a lot of money transference. Well,
and now with a weak dollar, one of the big things, this is a whole other subject, but our immigration program now is also hurting us with the weak dollar, because there is an argument for foreign tourism to benefit from weak dollar. We have the World Cup that we're supposed to be hosting this year.
Right, that's correct.
And this will be a great way to bring in a lot of money, a lot of tourist dollars. But again, the left hand, the right hand aren't seemingly on the same page here. And people are not going to come because of immigration issues at that point.
They'll be dissuaded from it. I mean, I think that's fair. Well, we have all these things that are out there. But so we just touched a little small points on this. Yeah. But the dollar weakening is a deliberate policy. I think is equivocal, and also in the middle of all this, disregarding the impact of the national bank here, our national bank here, saying, well, those guys, we're just going to take them off the deal because I have this tremendous desire to weaken the dollar. Just I want to weaken it. I want people to just use it as toilet paper, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing that the dollar is like, I don't know, whatever, any third world countries, something like that. And that's really bad. It's really bad. I mean, there's an argument to say the currencies fluctuate. Mm-hmm. But as a marker of this gold story, which is the reciprocal of the U.S. dollar, is absolutely unbelievable. It's never, ever been anything like this, never. And so things may switch back, but it is really a shaky economic event. When the dollar is substantially over $5,000 an ounce for an ounce of gold, that's an absolutely unbelievable event. It is unbelievable. And national banks, world banks, they're going to, and they're preferentially using gold instead of dollars. Well, you have a final word on this here.
I would just say that you're absolutely right that this is an intentional weakening. And I understand the economic arguments for it. There are economic arguments for a weaker dollar. But the costs of that weaker dollar, particularly self-inflicted costs, far outweigh any benefits that might emerge.
Okay. Well, on that note, thank you for your comments, Harry. And
Thank you for having me.
We'll talk some more. Thank you.
Thanks.